Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the virtual chapter for what month is this? Oh my gosh, it's still
June.
June. It is
Yes.
still June. Okay. Uh, June 2024. There's been like 2.5 months worth of time in the last 2 weeks, I think it seems like such a long time ago that we were all gathered together at the conference here. Quite a lot has gone down since then. So welcome everybody. We're delighted to have you. And maybe we can start out with a few announcements. What are some things coming up, Karen?
Well, we have several different things coming up. By the way, I just want to say something about IACT IMDHA. What a great time we had in Orlando. Before we move into the future, let's look back. Let's regress back just for a moment. It was a great time. It was a lovely conference. And we must say congratulations. We don't have to actually, but I absolutely want to say congratulations to our fearless leader. Michael, do you have your award to show us?
Oh my gosh. Well, no, it's in the other room, but
It's not really a plaque. It's really an award, right? Induction into the Hypnosis Hall of Fame.
exactly. That was
Yep.
really quite a surprise and really so appreciated from my heart. So thanks for saying so, Karen. I appreciate it.
I think Michael has always imagined in his mind that if there were a brick and mortar Hypnosis Hall of Fame, there would be a statue out in front, and it would be a statue of a feigning woman with an authoritative man standing over her giving suggestions. Well, I think now that you are inducted officially, that you should be that man in the statue.
Oh, maybe I'll just change the statue. I think that would be a better idea.
Well, I think so, since now there are more women in hypnosis than men.
That Karen will be the fainting woman then.
That will be it. That will be it.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
congratulations, Michael.
So, well, you're really welcome. And yeah, the conference was lovely. I don't know how many people that are on here were there, but several of you, a number of you, and a great time was had by all. As long as we're there. And Karen, I was going to text you and say that I was even going to bring this up, but I thought I might mention we did announce it at the conference. It isn't a secret, but that Roy Hunter had a stroke on Friday morning at the conference and was rushed off to the hospital. And he is still in the hospital. He's here in Orlando. I have visited him again and again and talked to him. I wasn't able to see him today because of this plague that I'm that I'm carrying around. But I did chat with him briefly, and I'm going to go see him tomorrow. He's making progress every day. He's a little stronger, a little more, ready to go, and looking forward to getting back to Washington. He sure misses being at home. As you can imagine, he's had his son here visiting for the last 5 days, which was conveniently timed. Actually, it worked out well because I wasn't, available, being in my class. But anyway, like I said, working towards recovery, and I'm anxious to find out tomorrow what the next update is. So I'll keep you posted.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
It's interesting that when one of our own, something happens to one of our own, how the news kind of does travel and people do care. But I don't know, and I've got to say this. I didn't tell you at all, Michael, that I was going to say this, and maybe you don't even want me to, but I'm going to say it anyway. I am so touched by my dear friend Michael Watson because they're in Orlando, he has gone to visit Roy daily.
Well, I can't help but think that if it were me and I were in a city a couple thousand miles away from home and there was nobody there, just how that would be. So,
It
so
just
maybe
touches my heart so much, Michael. It's such a caring, loving gesture. And isn't that the Michael Watson that we know him to be? Is anybody at all surprised by that?
I
Really?
am, I am just a little bit. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Michael, from all of us. I just want to say it's a very, very, very impressive thing.
Thank you very much.
Now, switching topics for just a little bit. Michael has been teaching certification all weekend, right? That's where the
I've been teaching NLP, the second half of an NLP training.
Sorry, my misunderstanding, but you have something coming up very quickly on board certification, do you not?
As a matter of fact, on the 22nd and 23rd of June, board certified hypnotist training, or well, training board certified hypnotist course. I don't know exactly what to call it. We don't like to call it a training because board certification, on the one hand, recognizes quality that already exists. On the other hand, our intention is both to discern what it is that participants have that they bring, uniquely, and help them, really accentuate that and bring it forward, but also to make sure that they've got the latest and the newest tools. There's some folks that are great hypnotists, but haven't seen what's happened in the last 5 years or 10 years, in the industry. It's an upgrade as well. And any of you that are interested in, check with the IACT IMDHA office, and you too can become a board certified hypnotist.
And in a second, not just yet. Boy, did that sound hypnotic. I'll tell you why I really think board certification is so important and why you might want to sign up to do this with Michael, but I'll come right back to that in just a moment. I want to do one more announcement real quick, and that is HTL, Hypnothoughts Live, coming up in July. Gosh, just a little over a month away. And I will be teaching a class there on dehypnotizing people. Accidental hypnosis is the #1 reason people choose hypnosis on purpose, because they were hypnotized someplace along the line. They had a spider phobia installed. They developed a fear of flying, whatever it was. That's the trance that they're walking around in every day. That's what causes them to call a hypnotist and say, can you help me get rid of this? So why are we hypnotizing them when they're already in that trance? It seems to me that our job is to dehypnotize them from the trance they're already in, so that they can find the trance state that feels better for them, that works better for them in their lives. So that's what I'll be teaching. I think I called it this time, accidental hypnosis is the #1 reason people choose hypnosis on purpose, but I also might have called it dehypnotizing clients. It's one or the other, and it'll be at a 2-hour workshop at Hypnothoughts Live coming up in July. Love to see you there because it is a great conference. Anybody else going to HTL in our group? Raise a show of hands. Janet is. Of course, Janet is going. Yes, it'll be a great place for us all to get together.
Yeah. And by the way, I wish I could be there. And it's one of those things I'm not going to be able to this time. Second year in a row due to health issues that are going on here at home with my other half. So sadly, we'll see y'all soon next year. There's always next year. And if you don't mind me backtracking just for a second, I misrepresented the dates. The board certified class is the 29th and 30th, the last weekend of the month, not the 22nd and 23rd. So there you go. Had to correct that.
So you have 2 weeks then to sign up.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So thank you for, are we through with announcements, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for circling back to that, because board certification is really one of the things I wanted to mention. I think it's so important to become board certified in our field. And this is why. It may not be exactly the reason you think. This is a little more branding than it is maybe hypnosis excellence. But I think the American Medical Association has gone a really long way. They just spent a boatload of money hypnotizing the American public to believe that board certified doctors are the ones you really want to get for any kind of surgery or medical care or anything like that. They have ads, they have flyers, they talk about board certified cosmetologists, board certified doctors, board certified this, board certified that. A boatload of money has been spent on hypnotizing people to develop the belief that board certification is a higher rank. Now, on the one hand, it is, because you have to jump through more hoops to become board certified. You have to take a class. You have to prove your abilities. You have to do something to prove that you deserve board certification by some higher authority. And I am board certified, but my nefarious reason for doing so is also for branding. I wanted to prove to myself that I was in that upper echelon, but it's also good for branding, because when you can put on your website board certified hypnotist, it's one more element to set you apart from everybody else. So as people are looking at websites, looking at your credentials, scrolling on past, trying to find out who they want to mess around in their head, board certification might be the thing that puts them on over the edge and tips them in your favor. Give it some consideration. Not only do you advance your education and your standing in our community, but also maybe in the public eye. So that might be a really good reason to consider joining Michael's class for good education first, but then also to have that credential to add to your background, to your CV. While we're talking about doctors, right? Why don't we borrow a little more stuff from doctors? I have been seeing an an orthopedic surgeon for my hand in the last few months because I have carpal tunnel. Now, 20 years ago, I had carpal tunnel in this hand and I had the surgery and my hand works perfectly. When I got it in my left hand, I knew exactly what it was. I went through jumped through all the hoops, went through everything I needed to do to get the carpal tunnel surgery. But because I'm of a certain age and have a certain kind of insurance, I have to do things in a certain way. First thing I had to do was meet with the orthopedic surgeon. Then through the meeting with the orthopedic surgeon, I had to go through some physical therapy or occupational therapy, because that's required before they do the surgery. Yada, 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 yada. I had to have an MRI. I had to have a CT scan. I had to have lots of testing on my hand. What they discovered is there are two things, long story short, it's too late for that. I've already made the story too long, but there are two things that they found, that one is in the carpal tunnel in my wrist and one is in my neck. So I went to the hand surgeon, who said, yes, this is how we're going to do the surgery. I really didn't like his approach to the surgery, so I wanted to look around for other surgeons who might do a different technique. But in the meantime, he said, well, let's do this cortisone shot, because that will really inform us as to how the surgery will go. That sounded reasonable to me. So I said, okay, we'll do the shot. He gave me a shot on my wrist. I have no needle phobia. I don't care about shots at all. He gave it to me, but it was like an electric current went off in the palm of my hand. It felt like, and an explosion in the palm of my hand. And from that moment forward, my hand has hurt more than it ever did before I saw that particular doctor. From my occupational therapist, I learned that he probably either whatever it is that they shoot into your hand, or something tapped into a ligament, a joint. Gosh, I don't have any medical knowledge, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Beryl might be able to explain this. I see Mary Beth nodding. You might know what I'm talking about. Whatever it was that he did, it made things way worse. My hand hurts way more than it ever did before. I'm getting a lot of nods. Paul is too. You guys know what I'm talking about. And the occupational therapist, as we were working on it, made it worse. And she didn't make it worse, but the exercises I had to do made the tingling and the pain and everything worse, all because of that shot. So the occupational therapist, I happen to mention, my hand is just one of the issues. I also have a C4 issue in my neck. I don't know what that means, but maybe you do. And she said, well, yes, I do. She said, just try this. She said, take your hand, the one that hurts, and hold on to the bottom of your chair, and take this hand here and just stretch your neck slightly this way. Just a little stretch right there. Well, that is a yoga move too. Some of you might recognize, right? It's a yoga stretch. I did that. The pain in my hand and the tingling both went away. Oh, look at all these knots again. Look at the gallery. Look at all of that. Yes, that took it away. Now, I do still occasionally have pain and numbness in my hand, but when I do this, it goes away. How many of you, show of hands, think I need the surgery in my hand? Yeah, right. Now, what would have happened if I'd have gone ahead with the surgery? If the timing would have been different and I'd have gone ahead with the surgery, now I would have had surgery in my hand and still no relief to the pain and tingling. Now I went back to the surgeon because I had a follow-up appointment with him, and I wanted to find out what the hell he did to my hand. So I kept that appointment and went back to that surgeon and said, basically, what the hell did you do to my hand? And he said, oh, that happens sometimes. As calmly as he possibly could, he just looked at me and said, oh, that happens sometimes. And I said, what do we do about it now? And he said, well, now that informs us about the surgery. Now we need to send you to the spine surgeon so they can look at that and see what we need to do with your neck. And I said, right. Guess what? Many patients are already hypnotized to believe what their doctor tells them. I don't happen to be one of those patients. I question doctors. I don't have a lot of respect for doctors in general because I don't fall into that hypnotic trance that I'm just going to believe what they tell me. And yet, when this guy, who was a very nice doctor, seemed to be a very learned doctor, said, oh, let's try the shot because it will inform us about your hand. Did I, the skeptic, question him in any way? Did I step back and say, wait a minute, is that going to cause more harm than good? No, I didn't. Because when he said, oh, let's try this because it will give us important information, I went, oh, well, you're the doctor. Of course, let's try that. That makes perfect sense to me. There's the hypnotic trance, the doctor trance. Does that make sense? And so I just went along with it, even though I'm a skeptic. That's the way we are hypnotized to believe our caregivers. So now we know the shot didn't work and the surgery probably won't work, but boy, did that occupational therapist give me a great tool, a great technique to help. Here's how all of this ties into hypnosis. I'll have to have surgery if I don't remember to do this when I need it the most. We can teach our clients all the fabulous techniques in the world. We can give them the best suggestions in the world. And we can even suggest that they do those things routinely. But unless you follow them around and live their life with them, you can't make them do those things. They have to actually do the techniques they've learned that help. They have to actually utilize what you've taught them, what they have learned and experienced works for them, and for it to work for them. Does that make sense? Now, this is where I say I want us to borrow from doctors. When I went to that doctor and said, what the hell did you do to my hand, and told him what happened, he said, yeah, that happens sometimes. Never did it cross his mind that he might have done something wrong. Never did it cross his mind that he made a mistake in the suggestion that he gave to me to try the shot. Didn't cross his mind. In his mind, he fully believes that he's doing the right protocol, the best way he knows how to do it every step of the way. And if something goes wrong or doesn't work, well, it's not his fault. I don't think any of us think that way. I think we take what we do to heart a little more than that. I think we take a little more responsibility for the outcomes than this particular medical doctor, who, by the way, is board certified. But I think we take a little more responsibility for what we're doing with our clients than that. And I think that we should. Please don't lower your standards in that way. But what I do want you to think about is every step of the way, you are doing your very best every time. If you run a protocol, you are doing that protocol to the best of your ability every single time. I guarantee you that if somebody calls me up and says, I need your help, I need my appendix removed, can you help me with that? I'm going to say, absolutely not. I'm not trained in that. I'm going to refer you to somebody who can help you with that. As I'm going to do with any other mind game that they might be playing for which I have no idea how to help. I'm going to listen carefully. to what my client's outcome is, what it is they desire. And if I have expertise in that, if I have a good idea of how I might be able to help them get this specified outcome that they desire, I'm going to take them as a client. If not, I'm going to refer them to somebody like now the neck surgeon to do the job. Doctors do that routinely every day, and we have respect for doctors in general, right? What I would like us to do is relax in our own craft a little bit more like that, and believe that we are doing our very best. Believe it to such an extent that if you don't believe you can help, refer that person on to someone who can. That doesn't denigrate your services, that raises you in the eyes of everybody. Does that make sense? And if you give a suggestion to somebody and they come back to a follow-up session and they didn't do any of the things you suggested, it's not your fault. You get to check in with them and say, okay, these were the things we agreed to. These were the things you said you would do over this week. Did you do that? Did you listen to your hypnosis process if you give them one? Did you practice your self-hypnosis if you taught them a technique? Did you wake up every morning and stretch as you said you would do? And when they say, oh, I did it the first 2 days, but then I just didn't do it. Now, whose fault is it that it didn't work? If a doctor gives you an antibiotic and says, take this antibiotic course for 10 days, and you start to feel better after 5 and stop taking the antibiotics because you feel better, if it comes back, it ain't the doctor's fault, right? So that's another thing I want us to borrow from doctors, is borrow the reality that our clients have a responsibility in this too. Our clients, probably our clients even more than a doctor's clients, because clients with a doctor, patients with a doctor can have the belief, and it can work for them, that the doctor's going to prescribe them some kind of magic pill and their symptom will go away. Hypnosis, by the way, is a magic pill. And when you have a client who believes in the magic, this will work just as well. But hold your client's feet to the fire so that they do their part in the equation. What we do really isn't magic. What we do is belief. And it's important that we also help our clients believe that they have to take action, that there is no change without change. And when they take action, they will get a benefit. If taken before, they will at the very least get a different result than they've been getting up to this point. And then they are in control. Then they are empowered to move forward. Boy, that was a weird and winding thing from board certification, but oh, Cheryl's doing my technique. It feels so good, does it not? Michael, were you about to say something?
No, except that I noticed there was a phrase that you said earlier that I just really wanted to grab before we finish this segment, because you said relax into our own craft. I continue to be absolutely amazed at the number of people that I know in the hypnosis community that never practice any kind of self-hypnosis or use it for self-care. They teach it to everybody else. They say, hey, this is really great for you. And oh my gosh, we have the tool. And in fact, not only do we have the tool, but we have it in thoroughly prepared and thought through. It's been on our mind for years. And every once in a while, when you find yourself really stuck in something, the idea of just sitting down, getting quiet, turning your attention inside, is what it takes to really restore us to a good place. So yay for hypnotists as well, and occupational therapists.
Yes, and can we next month open up with a debate on self-hypnosis?
Sure.
Because I don't necessarily think you have to relax into it.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
Ooh, let's make that the opening segment next week. We'll talk about self-hypnosis and how I believe everybody's practicing it all the time at all times, whether you mean to or not. Ooh, there's some of that accidental stuff all over again. Would that be all right with you, Michael?
That'd be perfect.
And you're the first to know. So join us here next month when we discuss or debate, as the case may be, self-hypnosis, at least for a short amount of time. If there are no questions, if you're ready to move along, I say it's time to develop some emotional intelligence. Would that be all right with everybody?
Fine with me.
Time to bring in, oh, my dear friend, Beryl Comar. I got to tell you, I met this woman years and years and years ago. Oh, probably just a couple of years ago, because, we're both just girls. Uh, at a conference, and just fell in love with this woman, and knew that we were great friends at a HypnoThoughts Live conference one year, when she shared with me some wine that she got from Boy George, because she had gone to see Boy George at a concert there, went backstage and hung with him, and he gave her some wine. And so I went, yep, okay, this is my kind of gal, let me tell you. This woman is fantastic. Now, I've got her whole bio here that I'd love to read some of it. She's been changing lives for over 40 years. She started when she was 3. Can you imagine that? The obvious expert in emotional intelligence. She uses hypnosis, NLP, EFT, and sleep talk coaching and training. She's trained in Dubai, in the Middle East, and beyond. She's a Brit, you'll be able to tell from the accent, but she's lived in Dubai. She lives now in Spain, and it's the middle of the night for her, and I'm very indebted to her for joining us. She's done teaching and counseling. She's a dynamic business communications trainer, executive coach, a previous ISO 9000 consultant and university head of department. Man, she's just got so much experience. She has done so much training. She wrote the book Hypnodontics, which I've looked all over for my copy and can't find it. But Cheryl, say something so that we can see it while you're holding it up. Oh, you'll have to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself for just a second, Cheryl, and say something so that we can actually see that book.
Yes, it's right here. And it's a fabulous book. It's written for both hypnotists and dentists, and a great way to market between. Great stuff in here. Whether you're using it for hypnodontics or using it for regular hypnosis, great stuff.
Thank you, Cheryl, very much. I appreciate that. I wish I'd been able to find mine and be able to hold it, because that's a great way to sell it too. It's a great book, but we're not going to really talk about hypnodontics tonight. We're going to talk about why Beryl calls herself an emotional intelligence specialist, and how she uses that in hypnosis, in NLP, for curing broken hearts, for working with dementia, for working in sessions with children. It's pretty amazing what she does. And Beryl, I want you to get into that. But before you do, I mean, you've been a teacher, you've been like a principal, you've worked in education. What brought you to hypnosis in the first place?
So many things. I was just always interested in which came first, language or thought or language. Could you think without language? Could you speak without thought? I mean, I remember it was snowing, and I was about I don't know how old I was, definitely younger than 6, and I wanted to go out and play. Mum said no, and she said, here, just stand at the back door and throw some crumbs out for the birds, and then you can sit at the window and watch the birds, which I duly did. And I still remember the sound of my mother ironing, the big old-fashioned iron. That's how old I am, guys, in the background. And I was looking out through the and seeing the steam on the and feeling the steam on the window as I'm looking out, and the birds came down to eat the bread. I'm watching this and watching this, and I said to my mum, Mom, how do the birds know that the bread is for them? And she said, Think about that, Beryl. She was an NLPer, obviously, very much. She didn't always feel she had to answer things. She really encouraged questions. So I continued watching. And then I said, oh, they don't know it's for them. They're stealing it. She's, I want you to think about that word stealing, Beryl. You know, who put that out for the birds? Oh, but how do they know it's for them? And I was going round and round. And I was asking her about how are they thinking and how are they telling each other that the bread is there, because then more birds came and things like that. And it's one of my earliest memories, is this questioning, and this questioning also from my mum. I guess she realized if she just answered the questions too quickly, then I'd be bored of the birds and go off and create mayhem, because everybody knows if Beryl's bored, she's dangerous. I think I was even at that age. So I just was always interested in that. And I became a teacher. I just love teaching. And I think, you know, I eventually married a doctor, but way up. I mean, I was never going to get married. And the only reason he was acceptable to me was because he saw being a doctor as being a teacher. You know, in Latin, doctora means I teach. You know, and knowledge is power, and I'm not. And I think we need to teach. You talking about board certification? We need to teach so many people about hypnosis, what it is, what it isn't. I was telling you I had three long train journeys down from Girona today. Trains are a lot more common, by the way, in Europe, and an American and a Spanish Moroccan boy, and it was just fascinating. And I was doing the testing, muscle testing. I was using a lot of waking hypnosis and things like that, talking about dehypnotizing, etc., etc. And people are fascinated, but they're still full of so many myths. And they both said, thank you so much for teaching us and telling us all about this. And they felt so wonderful. I'm sure the girl's going to go to Washington now, you know, any good hypnotists in Washington, and work on some of her issues, and the boy will too. It's so easy to just talk about what we do, because people are fascinated by what we do, and we should talk about it. And I know there are other people around listening in too. So that's fun. But I want to start with a question again, because I love questions. Did you know when I did my master's in applied linguistics, I actually did a thesis on the structural functionalism of the English question form. So how are they Arab children in school, how did they develop the English question form? And it was a cross-sectional study, grade 2, KG2, grade 2, grade 4, to see how their questioning was developing, and did it develop in exactly the same way as English speakers develop the question form, because that's been studied, but nobody had studied that. So I'm fascinated by questions. So here goes my first question. Put your hand up if you think you believe you are emotionally intelligent. Put your hand up if you believe you are emotionally intelligent. Okay, thank you. If you believe that you're emotionally intelligent, do you have a definition of what emotional intelligence is? Put your hand up if you do. That's interesting that you have to really think about that. So, and do you know how many intelligences there are? Carol? Hi, Carol.
Well, there's all kinds of intelligences.
There are. How many
I
officially?
have no idea how many. I know there's spatial relation intelligence. There are pattern recognition intelligences. There
Yeah,
are,
well, it's the work of Howard Gardner. Yeah, Professor Howard Gardner, who's Canadian originally, spent a lot of time studying in Canada and in the States. And it was after the Second World War. They wanted to make, Europe was, and America too, we need to get people into the workplace. We needed to build schools because there was a big, I was one of them, a boomer, born in 1949. And they wanted to make sure that they were getting the right kind of education for children. And the emphasis wasn't on universities and eggheads at that time. It was on skilled jobs. They needed to build houses and roads and furniture, and they needed to get the plumbing back after all the bombing that had gone on, and they need to get the electrics up. And the emphasis was on skilled, and they wanted skilled people. So they asked Professor Howard Gardner could he develop something that could test children at around the age 11 so they could be channeled into the right kind of education. And that's when the 11+ exam in Britain, I don't know if you've heard about that, was developed. And I was one of those who took the 11+ exam. And it was very unfortunate, the vocabulary, and we know how important words are, we're hypnotists. If you passed, you went to the grammar school, which was much more of it speaks for itself, grammar, education. You learn Latin and languages and, maths rather than arithmetic and things like that. That's where I went. And then the other kids would go to the technical schools or the secondary modern schools. But I always wish that I'd gone, because they had nice domestic science labs and there were needlework and carpentry, and they had all sorts of interesting subjects, and they didn't have to do algorithms and boring old things like we did. They did math, they did arithmetic. I mean, I don't know about you, but I never used an algorithm since I left school. Tables and tables of algorithms. So they did maths, and they did how to build bank accounts and useful things like business, rather than do lots of exams. And those were the people that would build Britain again, build Europe. And it's interesting, those are also the people that kept their jobs during COVID as well, wasn't it? It was the people that went to the grammar schools, often that lost their jobs because they were the eggheads that we didn't need during COVID. So he and the easiest thing at that time to test was our linguistic, our mathematical, logical skills. So this test, the 11+ exam, was logical skills and linguistic skills. And that became known as your IQ. The only reason we have this thing called IQ is because they were the easiest things to measure. And then several years later, but he did say there were 9 intelligences. So we've got the mathematical, logical, the linguistic. And then he said there's a visual intelligence and an auditory intelligence and a kinesthetic intelligence, which, interesting, is what Bandler and Grinler started to look at in later years. And then he said there's interpersonal intelligence and intrapersonal intelligence. Intrapersonal, my self-awareness and my self-management. Interpersonal, I guess, is what I'm doing now, looking at you, looking at the social awareness and who's falling asleep, who's not interested. Maybe I'll pick on that person to wake them up. From that, our social relationship or relationship management. And that's what everybody wants. They want relationship management in order to make their sales, to find a boyfriend or a husband, you know, to get on with people, work in teams. And then the last two, intelligence, and those are the two intelligences, intrapersonal, interpersonal, that were looked at and put together and called emotional intelligence. Okay, and then the last two intelligences are naturalistic intelligence. That's, for example, living in Dubai for 42 years, I really came to admire the Pakistani gardeners that came in. They could grow things in sand. They could read the landscape. They just, and yet they couldn't write a word. They had to sign for the salary with a thumbprint. Yeah, they could just grow anything. And in that naturalistic intelligence, we have people who can, horse whisperers, people who are good with animals and nature, and so important now. These are the people who've really been caring for the environment, although there are others that have been are only just aware of what's happening in the environment, and some who are ignoring it altogether. And the last one that he said we have is our spiritual or existential intelligence. This is not religious, by the way. Following a religion is like following a cult. It doesn't need intelligence. You're just a follower. Those are the big questions that we ask, like, who am I? What is life? Is there other life out there? Those big questions. And it's interesting with these 9 intelligences that if you sort of twist them round upside down a bit, and that's how I think we develop. If you think about children ask those big questions. They ask, where did I come from? Yeah, who am I? They ask those natural intelligence. Oh, don't ask. I can't, because they're questions we can't answer. So we tell them to shut up. And kids are naturalistically intelligent, aren't they? They love mud pies and watching bees, and living in Africa as I did, I saw how close to the earth the people are. The Maasai tribe, which is the tribe mostly, and the Warusha, where I lived, so connected with the earth and the land, and they could read the weather. They didn't need a weatherman and an 8 o'clock news to tell them what the weather was going to be like today. They kind of knew. And you could see the Maasai walk across barefoot. They didn't have to go and spend a lot of money to walk across glass or fire to prove that they could walk across Africa and the thorns with lions around them, and the lions would go, "Whoa, Maasai, keep away," because the lions have that memory. And the children automatically have intrapersonal intelligence. They can go to anybody and know they're loved and love them, and they just hug someone's knees. Don't get so friendly with people. Don't trust people. They have intrapersonal intelligence. They know their feelings. They're not afraid to say, I hurt, or what's going on, even if they don't have emotional literacy. And I just think how gardeners work is fascinating. And I'm so pleased that I learned that in the 60s when I was training to be a teacher. So when NLP came along, it kind of fitted into my teaching and what I knew. And I'd already learned in Africa. There was some passing through California hippies who stayed at the school where I was teaching for a while and did some voluntary work in exchange for some accommodation and food. And they taught me transcendental meditation. They were also into the Silver Method and things like that. So I'd learned things like that in the 60s. I was learning about comparative religions because I was in an area where there were many of my students were Muslim. Many of them were tribal people who didn't have a statutory religion. So I was learning about their beliefs because I'm just interested in those things and where do beliefs come from? Again, the questions that we ask. So when I then moved after 4 years to Dubai, it was natural that with those long summer holidays that I would start studying in my holidays. I wasn't going to go home to mom. And that's when I started going to the States. I did a master's in Sarasota, University of South Florida, in bilingual education. Later in UK, I did another master's in applied linguistics. Just because, and I didn't know why, because I'd always been interested in, applied linguistics is not learning languages, by the way. It's applying things like I worked in the speech lab, I worked with the deaf, and teaching English as a foreign language, and computational linguistics, and it's just fascinating stuff, rhetoric and semantics. And actually, that's what Grinda taught, before I knew about NLP. And when I wanted to study this thing called NLP that I was starting to hear about, I was told, oh, no, we don't do that. That's American. No. And it's not scientific. And so the more I was told I couldn't do it, and it wasn't what my professors wanted me to do, the more, of course, I had to do it. I didn't even stay for graduation. I was on as soon as I've finished all the courses and my name's up there and I've got it. I'm not staying around for graduation. I'm off to the States to find this NLP thing, and down to Mexico to Puerto Vallarta to find Bandler and all these people. So that was the start of that. But working and then back to the Middle East, because I had that experience and not many people around with that experience. And I was then head teacher of a bilingual school that's set up by the Sheikh of Dubai, the current Sheikh's father, Sheikh Mohammed, his father, Sheikh Rashid, set that school. And he chose me, even though I was far too young really to be a school principal. Because he said, you speak Swahili, you'll learn Arabic quickly, and you already know more about Islam than anybody who's just taught in UK. So, but it really taught me resilience. It really taught me to bounce back, and the importance of rapid change. I was watching a country develop from a Bedou country where people wandered around on camels with their housing on their back, basically, to this amazing place that it is now. It's just how they dealt with change it's just phenomenal. And when you think that 85 to 90% of the people that live in the country are not nationals, when there are other countries and saying we don't want other people coming into a country, that's a country that has 85 to 95, and yet it's the most peaceful country. Didn't lock my car, didn't need to. Police don't have guns. Everybody gets on, and it's the most tolerant place you can think of. Women do not cover up. It's not what people think. But I did get, and I watched people get into the money trap, and I had the values I'd learned in Africa where money didn't matter. So I spent all my money on education. I saw people get into the morals, the morals trap and the ethics trap. And a great observer, fell into it myself sometimes as well. But when I started learning NLP and hypnosis, I thought I would just I didn't ever think it was going to be my job. Never crossed my mind. I wanted to learn to be better at my job. I wanted to find if there was some way it would help the children to learn better. I just saw NLP as applied linguistics, which it is. So when you're the school principal and you open your office door, who do you see standing outside with their head down a little bit? The naughty boys, Hello, Ali. Yeah, why are you standing outside my office today? Oh, Miss Smith sent me. Oh, she did. Why did Miss Smith send you? I was naughty. Come in my office. Nobody knew that hypnosis and NLP were my hobby. I didn't talk about it at that time. So I used to hypnotize them. How politically incorrect. Hypnotize the kids. Send them back. After, it was quite some time. It was about 12, 18 months later. Well, at the time they'd say, I don't know what you do with the kids when they're so good when they come back to class. They were so good. Okay. But there was one boy who kept putting his hand up and saying, Miss, I'm going to be, can I go see Miss Beryl? Because I'm going to be naughty. What does he mean he's going to be naughty? This kid was emotionally intelligent. He knew how to fix his emotions, that he could go there and he wouldn't get into trouble. There was someone to listen to. And I thought that was amazing. This was in the days when teachers were taught how to teach. They were taught about learning, not like now you study your subject and they're going to teach your subject. They don't learn about child development the way they used to. It's very sad. So that's why I got out of education. Later we set up the first women's university, Sheikh Zayed University, which was wonderful to be able to help these girls now go into higher education, because it was only there were some Arab families that were sending their children over to Boston, to London, but they usually had to go with their brother or a male chaperone. So it was wonderful to open up the university. Recently, I went back because I'd left during COVID, and for 4 years, my bank manager, who was one of my ex-students, and the loans manager at my bank had kept my bank account open, even though it was illegal to do so because I was out of the country. So it does help to have some wasta, as we say in Arabic, influence. But I asked a question about emotional intelligence, and because I was shocked when I started going to the conventions. I think I went to my first convention in 2000, that nobody knew what emotional intelligence was. Nobody had heard about it. And yet Goleman's book had come out in 1995. Not that I would recommend anybody to read his first book, Emotional Intelligence, because it's since then. There's a lot of better books, and then the way we frame it now is differently. But nobody had read it. Nobody talked about emotions. Nobody knew the term emotional literacy. So, and I was banging on about how we should be getting in as hypnotists into this field of emotional intelligence early, because other people would get in who didn't know what we knew, and they did. The coaching fraternity, the people like Mind Valley, people who are marketing people got in, and we should have been there at the start. We should have been the ones leading the emotional intelligence revolution. because, you know, big names like Drucker, etc., have said that it's not your IQ that makes you a star, it's your emotional intelligence. And you can have all that schooling and all that learning, but if you don't know if you don't know how to get on with teams, if you don't know how to pass that knowledge on or sell your product, like, I don't know if you have that program, Dragon's Den in the States, where people have an invention or something, they take it to some experts and sell it.
Shark,
And there was,
in the States, it's Shark Tank.
yeah, that sounds about it. Yeah. You know, and they don't know how to get their point across, then and express their emotions and know themselves, then there's no point in having all that. And if you can't listen to an appraisal and really use both sides of your brain, your your logical conscious brain and your emotional brain working together, which is actually what emotional intelligence is, rather than going off emotionally or being terribly factual. It's about getting the two to work together. Who better understood that than us hypnotists? And I used to find it so, used to find it so frustrating. Now I just say I can't change the world, but yeah, it's the principles of emotional intelligence are what I'm using all the time with my clients. It's what I'm using with my patients. It's what I was using all this weekend. I had 3 days training 15 dentists in Girona that have come from all over Spain to learn hypnodontics, teaching them the kind of language that they can use to really have a client more anxious or to have them more relaxed, how they can work in tandem with us to refer. I always say that to the dentist, my job as a hypnotherapist is to make you look good. So you send me your gaggers, you send me your people with bruxism and TMJ issues, send me people who have excessive bleeding or excessive saliva. When I come back to you, you're spending less time with them. They're not in pain because you're also learning how to use hypnosis together with anesthetics if you choose to, or alone. And then you look good. You know, it's this symbiosis that I like to work with, so they improve their chair manner. I work with them so that they can improve their aches and pains. We have Dennis here, I see, which is wonderful, who's a you're a dental practitioner. He knows that holding their body in that position, you know, while using the instruments and in that tiny space, the most stressful thing. You're working in a tiny space all day long. You know, maybe you got the jitters that day, too much gin and tonic the night before, or a fight with the wife, or just not feeling so well. You've got the little shakes. You can't have the shakes when you're working in a small space like that. And you're sensing the anxiety, the mirroring from the patient who's highly anxious. You know, one little nick inside that mouth, and you've made a mess. You've got an angry person. It's the most stressful job you can imagine. So much help. And how I got involved with that is because I was the, you know, I guess I went to the kind of the dentists who were like, your doctor, it happens sometimes. Oh, so what, you know? Because, you know, I was the kid who kicked him in the stomach because he was over me. And it was only later that I realized it's because of being sexually abused when I was a child, and having, you know, a hand over my mouth, and gagging, and the smell of sweat as somebody was over me. All those visual, auditory, kinesthetic things. And I wanted dentists to know. I started to look at the relationship between dental health and the brain, you know, which has led me now to work with dementia patients. And I love that work. I know Carol is who's on here is doing that too. And now the research is coming out about dental health and heart health. It seems that dental, I hope Dennis will chime in, because I know he also keeps up to date. Oral health is so important, but I've always been interested in the words that people say as well, you know, because they come out of your mouth, and that's also connected. I'm just fascinated by this mouth thing. but it's all tied with emotional intelligence. So for the people that said they're emotionally intelligent, actually, we're not so emotionally intelligent as human beings. We have to learn to be emotionally intelligent. People think it's innate. And you were talking earlier about hypnotherapists. Are they as emotionally intelligent as they think? Often not. They're often so busy telling people. They're not asking questions. They're not learning about their client. They're so into their process. And that's what I've been working with dentists this week, is get away from process and be interested in people. And then they come back to you. When you learn about, let me tell you a story okay, so Sam is the same age as me, but he's maybe a little bit more forgetful and living on his own. He's a bit isolated. His daughter usually does his banking because he doesn't like using the ATM and things like that. So, but one day he decided to go into town and go to the bank. He doesn't like the ATM, so he went into the bank to get some money. I don't know about in the States, but we don't have money in the banks anymore. You can't get, there's no cashier. Nobody has money in a bank. The machine has it. So he went in and he stood in the line, and then he started talking to the girl at the desk about how he wanted €100. He wanted this €100 because he didn't have any money at home. And she was new, young, and hadn't realized that this old guy doesn't realize that things have changed. So she's trying to explain, and he's getting very frustrated and angry, and she's explaining, I don't have money, but this is my bank. I've always come to this bank. Don't tell me you don't. And so the frustrations were going up, the temperature's going up. The man behind, who'd come in for some customer service, sort out a problem or whatever, saw what was happening, went around the back to the manager, said what was happening. The manager looked out, said, oh yeah, I know this guy, he's been here for a while. Came out, took Sam into his office, calmed everything down, and helped him to go to the ATM machine and get some money. That's an example of emotional intelligence. Yeah, everybody there, once they were using their emotional intelligence, they took care of the problem. And in a short time, Sam was smiling, and the manager, as he left, looked up his file and called his daughter to say, I don't know if you know, but Sam is in town. We haven't seen him for a while, and you've been doing most of his banking. We thought you should know. And he's gone off in the direction of whatever. Okay. And the cashier, the customer service person, who's not a cashier anymore, just apologized to everybody for keeping them waiting. Everybody saw what was going on and business returned to normal. That's an example of emotional intelligence where everything was calmed down. People were feeling nervous, feeling a little bit what's good, but they weren't getting angry. They weren't getting the situation bigger and bigger. And still, which you often see, don't you, in companies and lines, in queues. And I found that also in Spain, that like today, when I had to switch in Barcelona from one platform to another platform, and then the train was delayed, and there were quite a lot of tourists because it's Barcelona, it's full of tourists. The Spanish were just on their phones. They said, "Oh, it's going to be delayed," and then they were, you know, "Oh, are you looking for platform 12? Yes. Okay, I speak some English. I speak some," and they were all just helping one another. Nobody was getting irate. And I kept thinking, if I were in other countries, the emotional intelligence would have been going crazy. Okay, so it's, what is it? No, emotional intelligence. It's our ability to use our emotions in a positive way for our own outcomes and for the outcomes of others. And in the, you know, if you can do it, I just wrote some notes today, it helps you to solve problems because you're using both logic and feelings. It's well known that you make your list of what you want when you buy a house, and you've got your logical list, and then you fall in love with a house and the list goes out, out the window. But you that's wrong. You need to have both there, and it needs to not just be a heart thing, because afterwards you think, well, we're right in the middle of nowhere and one of us doesn't drive and there's no bus service or something. So you've got to have both working together. So you're using your IQ and your EQ together. And again, these are often used interchangeably. Emotional intelligence, EI, and EQ means the measurement or the quotient of your emotions. So there are assessments that have been developed. Some are just online things that haven't been properly statistically analyzed. Some of them have because they've been standardized in different languages to different cultures and things like that. So there's all sorts of things that people do, as we know in NLP, to delete, distort, and generalize. Okay, so if you really, the more I started learning about emotional intelligence, I was saying, this is what we do. We should all stop calling ourselves hypnotists, which has always been contentious, hasn't it? It's a contentious word. It's an emotional word for many people. You know, I'm a hypnotist. Oh, I know. Everybody's got a view, even if they haven't a clue what it is. But everybody wants to be emotionally intelligent. And I switched from calling myself a hypnotherapist because it got me corporate work as well. I worked with Dubai Police. I used to run emotional intelligence courses for them. It was NLP courses, you know, how to talk to all these different people. As I say, 85–90% of the people in the country are not locals, and they don't carry guns. They have to have an incident to be able to call for a gun. So they've only got words. They've only got words to calm people down, and they're so good at it. Yeah, maybe it's the training they've had. I don't know. But we
Beryl,
called
let
it.
me ask you to do one other NLP thing, if you don't mind, and that is specific. Be specific, if you don't mind, about how you would use this in the case of dementia, in the case of children. How do you turn this around and use this power in those specific instances?
Okay. The one that's easiest to think about is hallucinations. You know, there's a form of dementia called Lewy bodies where they have hallucinations that might see people at the window or, you know, and the thing is to enter their world, to find out and use questions, because it's so, what I find a lot of carers and people say is, oh, don't be stupid, Daddy, there's nobody at the window. Don't be stupid, there's nobody there, nobody there. But the more you say that to them, the more they're emotionally charged in the situation. And then it just gets bigger and bigger and they both end up just fighting. So you ask questions, you know, oh, so they say, somebody at the window, there's a man at the window, there's a man at the window. Really? Oh, what does the man look like? Which gets them to think, oh, yeah. Oh, what's he dressed like? I'm being listened to and I can't really think. So I've got to think now, which is difficult because I've got my dementia, or I can say, oh, yes, I know that man. I asked him to give us a quote for cleaning the windows. Yeah. So if you see him again, you tell me, because I've been waiting for this quote quite a while. And 2 days later, they say, there's a man in a window. They've forgotten us. Oh, yeah, probably that man to give us a quote for the windows. And if you think about it, it's exactly what you do with children. If children came up to you and said, there's fairies at the bottom of my garden, you wouldn't say, don't be stupid, there's no fairies at the bottom of the garden. Well, I hope you wouldn't. You'd ask questions. Really? Where are they? Are they there all the time? What kind of fairies are they? You'd want, remember, imagination, reality? Get into the imagination. Yeah? Shall we go and look for the fairies? Do you think they'll talk to me as well? And how you would talk to children, you would talk with your dementia people. It's very easy, actually, if you know NLP, to do that, you know, and distraction, not with one thing, but a choice. Oh, do you want this or this? So you're using like a visual squash. What do you want, this or this? Rather than, what do you want for dinner, Dad? That's too big a question for a child or someone with dementia. You say, Dad, would you like fish fingers and mashed potato? Or would you like a roast beef sandwich? What do you want, Dad? Fish fingers, roast beef sandwich. What do you want for dinner? This is enough. And that's just what you would do with the child. With the child, though, you'd be building up from a choice of 2 to 3 to 4 to independence. Whereas with dementia, that's not always the case. But we know that there are 7 levels on the Rydberg scale. Oh, I asked you, I want to ask you, how many of you think you may have dementia?
Maybe a tiny bit, maybe.
Well, actually,
Right, yeah.
every hand should be up, even you youngsters, because there is no level 0. There is no level 0. Level 1 is, you know, average sort of 35-year-old who sometimes forgets where they put their keys, or sometimes is looking for the glasses and on the top of the head, or, you know, arrives at work without the thing that they were working on last night, has to turn around or whatever, you know, forgets their mobile phone or drops things. So that's level 1. I know I'm at level 2. Level 2 is age-related dementia. Yeah, so I'm doing those things a little bit more now. I'm having to write things down a little bit more. I go shopping and I come back with things that weren't on my list because I forgot my list, and without the things that were on my list. But I now write my list a different way so that I can close my eyes. We're teaching them strategies for going through. And if I stay at level 2 dementia all my life to my 80s, and I'm 75, if I stay at level 2 into my 80s and 90s, I'm very happy. I'm very happy. But level 3, my parking gets a little bit dodgy because my spatial awareness is not quite the same. So I'll have more, we call them here Spanish kisses.
Uh-oh, I think you just put me into level 3, Beryl. You're talking about parking.
More forgetfulness, sleeping a lot more. But look up Reisberg scale, REISBERG, and see where you are on that scale. But once you get to level 4, you're in the mid stage. So the earliest you can detect that, the better. And people like Carol and I, we can administer something called the MOCA, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. And I have now persuaded some people in the village to do that. They're in their 50s. They've got a baseline. And if they can do that assessment every couple of years, they can see if there are any changes. I mean, wouldn't you want a baseline for your heart? An ECG baseline, and then every couple of years, you'd want to see what the improvement is or isn't. It's the same. Why do people wait until it's obvious they've got dementia to do an assessment? It's obvious. It's a bit like an alcoholic when they go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and they have to go around and say, I'm sorry for the times I did this and I did that. You know that, I'm an alcoholic, and everybody said, oh, we knew it. Oh, we knew it all the time. Well, people wait too late. Do an assessment now. Carol, you can do those assessments, isn't that right? I can do them, and we've done them ourselves.
Well,
So
yes, and also people don't know that they've been developing dementia in their 20s. It's just they don't have any symptoms until they're in their 60s.
Yeah, and we can help them emotionally to get through that, because the worst thing in my mind is denial. Denial is our biggest enemy. Denial. Because if they're living in denial, we can't help them, but we can help with so many strategies. NLP strategies, hypnosis strategies, and the carers. It's a bit like the work I do with dentists. I take a lot of care of my dentists. Because
My sister who
refer to me, the carers are going through so much stress because now their husband, their wife, or whoever, daddy, is, I can't go out with them because they're dribbly or whatever. So I'm isolating. I'm not going out. And everybody asks, how's dad? But nobody asks, how are you managing? There's so much we can do for carers. Yeah, Carol?
I was going to say my sister was a carer, and she had emotional intelligence that no one knew about because she was academically backward. So as a carer, her person got in the middle of the night in the middle of Los Angeles, and she said, John, where are you going? And he says, I'm going to milk the cows. And she said, I've already milked them. And he said, oh, I'll go back to bed then.
Yeah.
Really smart. Quick thinking.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that was her strength. And she always thought she was stupid because she didn't do what everybody thought academic intelligence meant everybody had to be. And she had this other kind of intelligence that people are now beginning to recognize.
One of my certification students a few years ago was a high school principal or assistant principal, and he was really in charge of the special ed kids. And we had just been talking a lot about Erickson and meeting in the hypnosis training, meeting your client where they are and joining them where they are first and then helping them find a way out. We'd just done a lot of talking about that. And at our very next session, he said that there was a day that week when he had been called down office where one of the kids, about a 12-year-old, I think, a medium-sized boy, had gotten under the desk and was banging on the desk, under the teacher's desk, and just banging and kicking and banging and screaming. And they'd called down some people to help, and people kept trying to drag the kid out. And finally, they called the assistant principal down, and he arrived and saw what was happening and got under the desk with the kid and started banging too. And it didn't take very long before the kid stopped and wondered what he was doing. And he said, what do we do? What is it you're wanting? And he said, I want people to think I'm a smart boy. And the teacher said, well, what do smart boys do? Do they bang on desks? And he said, no. They get out from the desk and go to their table or whatever it was. And the kid got out and went back to work. But I just thought that was brilliant. That is a perfect example of emotional intelligence, is it not? Join them where they are and help them find a different way out.
Yeah, it's about being very flexible in changing situations. It's about realizing I can't control anything out there, the tsunamis, the earthquakes, the people. I can only change my reaction to it. It's the only thing I control. That's one of the discussions I had with this young man on the train. He said that was such a big takeaway. I can't control any of that, but I can control my reaction to it. Yeah.
It's all important feedback. And if we're willing to take the feedback, go from there.
And helping other people to express their needs, not always your needs. Helping them to develop emotional literacy. Did you know that? You probably know that little girls are so much better at communication because they play with dolls and they play school and things like that. Well, but boys are a bit more rough and tumble and they don't develop the same vocabulary to be able to express emotion. They usually about 4 points less on the tests of emotional intelligence than females. Because of emotional literacy, they find it difficult to. It's not that, how some people say, oh, my husband is a swinging brick. He doesn't want to talk about emotions. They don't have the vocabulary. And we know how to help because we use metaphor. We know the power of metaphor. We can encourage those guys to use metaphor. Why are so many of the poets through history men? Because they could write metaphor, but they didn't have the word to explain how they really felt, but they could do so in metaphor. Yeah, that ability to calmly work with difficult people and not feel you've got to control them or make them do things,
Feel it's an affront to you and your ability to help in some way.
Yeah, I knew the emotional intelligent staff I had as a teacher because they just knew how to work with little Billy, who was, before we had ADHD, we called them the itchy fidgety kids.
Right. Right. And didn't need to drug them either in order to.
I used to know what to do with the itchy fidgety kids. I gave them jobs to do, and jobs in which they had to move around the classroom and help me to put things up and and do things. And
Beryl, believe it or not, you're going to get to go to bed in about 4 minutes. We're almost out of time, but
pick it up now.
well, that's not my responsibility.
But, optimistic and positive outlooks is important. And how we get such depressed clients. We know about depression and optimism. I can't believe that the whole emotional intelligence revolution happened and hypnotists and NLPers never got involved. It hurts me every day because we could have really have become the profession that were the go-to profession when people were talking about emotional intelligence.
Well, don't write us off yet. You're here instructing us all now to jump on the bandwagon and get involved. And you have some trainings coming up, do you not, Beryl?
Yeah, but don't ask me the dates or anything.
Well, I know that
I'm
coming up, there's
joking.
there's some
You know,
things.
I think I've told you my 3 Ds, haven't I? Do it, dump it, or delegate it. I don't do dates and marketing.
But if you do want to keep up with Beryl,
Delegating.
you can go to her website, berylcomer.com.
Yeah, I'm happy to put it on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still love teaching about working with kids because that's why I first started, was to work with kids. But my broken heart, sure, I love that as well, because I don't think anybody should suffer with a broken heart. And there's so many people going around with a broken heart. Yeah, feel neutral about that person rather than anger or upset. Neutral. It was a great learning and move on. And that's just using NLP techniques again, like changing the color of this whole experience and the big picture of it as, oh, it was wonderful. It was, pink and roses and romantic and right in front of my face, to black and white and far away, and cutting cords and things like that. But I worked on getting a system that could be done very quickly.
Mhm.
It's
So
all lovely work, and we so appreciate you staying up until the middle of the night to talk to us about your journey and emotional intelligence and how we can use it.
thank you.
I just wanted to get in one real quick question because Paul put it up here in the chat quite some time ago, and I didn't ignore it, Paul. I just didn't get it in. Linguistics includes body language.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Linguistics includes, sign language as well.
Facial expressions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sign language.
Tone of voice.
Look at, if you come to Spain, you'll be able to drive here because most of the signs on the road are the same as you have in the US, same as we have in UK and everything. So that's linguistics, reading those signs and knowing what they mean. International signs for a toilet, for where the ladies are and the men's are, and signs.
Don't forget to apply for your CEUs for joining us tonight. You get them from all sorts of organizations. Beryl is an NGHCI SMI, so you can get these from NGH, you can get from IACT, IMDHA. All friendly associations will give you CEUs for joining us tonight. Just let them know that you attended. And Beryl, we thank you so much. I mean, I know it's been a rough day for you. We're going to let you go. But before you do, everybody join us back here for second Tuesday of next month. The guest is going to be confirmed tomorrow. Otherwise, we'd let you know tonight, but I'll post it as soon as we have our confirmation. We'll see you here second Tuesday of next month. Now, please open your mics and give Beryl the send-off that she deserves, because we have a cacophony of thank yous now for appreciation for joining us, Beryl.
Thank you.
Beryl,
Thank
Brilliant.
you.
Lovely.
Great
Brilliant.
job.
Really lovely.
Really enjoyed it.
Great
Great
Brilliant.
So
information.
nice.
Thank
See so
you.
many
4
of you.
a.m. Go to
I
bed.
love that bit about bringing in kids, they're misbehaving and going to your office, and then you're hypnotizing them to, kind of change, their whole conception of what they're doing and what they're about. That is so fucking brilliant.
Isn't it beautiful?
Okay.
Thank you,
Good
Beryl.
night.
Good night, y'all.
Thank you.
So-
Bye.
Night.
Thank you.